Okay, welcome back to the conclusion of graphing. If you haven't watched the first video, you should probably go back and watch it. As a matter of fact, you should have seen the analyzing video as well, because we're going to go back to use this mess, and this mess only makes sense if you first watch the analyzing data video. And then we've already talked about graphing with box and whiskers plot. We've talked about graphing with histograms and pie charts, as well as dot plots. So today we're going to talk about the scatter plot and the line graph, and then we're going to also talk about the stem and leaf plot. So first off, let's talk about a scatter plot. A scatter plot is simply on a coordinate grid. Okay. A lot of cases we're only going to use coordinate 1, but it could be any of the 4 quadrants. You're going to plot points, and that's all you're going to do. So maybe your data looks like it's going to be a set of points. So let's get some points going here. Let's say that your data looks like this. You got an x, y here. We'll just make a t-table. And let's say that we got 1, 2, 2, 4, 3, 3, 4, 7, and how about 5? I don't know. How about 5, 5? Okay. So a dot plot is simply you graph these points. So we go. Remember, x is across. Y is up and down. This is why I said typically it's in quadrant 1, but you could extend this and have all 4 quadrants go in the coordinate plane. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're counting by ones. I'll label it so we know we're counting by ones. Remember, 0 is the corner. Okay, so 1, 2. So I go x is 1 up to 2, and I put a dot. And I do the same thing for the next one. So 2, we go up to 4, and we put a dot. And then at 3, we're at 3, and we put a dot. And at 4, we're way up here at 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's our top line. And then at 5, we're down at 5, which should be about there. Okay, so this is called a scatter plot. And it's called a scatter plot because the dots are just scattered across the coordinate grid. Okay, so typically, if you're making a scatter plot with data, you would have a name here and a name here telling us what this data is. So for example, if this had been x is time and y is distance, then we would label this time and this distance. And you should probably have units, so I'm going to say it's feet, and time we measured in minutes. Okay, so make sure you label the x and y axis. That's really important on a scatter plot, as well as you get your x and y correct. Now, you should know that you can use anything. It doesn't have to be x and y. So, for instance, one of the things I've seen on the SAT before is instead of x and y, they simply use it as t and f. So instead of x over here, this is now t. And instead of y up here, this is now f. So don't get too carried away of x and y. I know we use it all the time, but you can graph on anything. So if they called it t and f on the SAT, don't let that throw you. It's still t and f. Okay, t being time and distance being f, and maybe it's d for distance instead of f, whatever they pick. So just be aware that they could switch it up. But most of the time, we're going to use x and y because this is an x-y coordinate grid. All right, now let's talk about a line graph. Here's how a line graph is different. Remember, this is called a scatter plot. A line graph is simply you connect the dots in order from left to right. So I'm going to use green here, and we're going to connect the dots. And we now have a line graph. And just like before, you should have your axes labeled. Typically, it's going to be x and y, but I know on the SAT sometimes they change it up. So make sure that you're aware that you can change it up. And you should have it labeled. And we have these labeled again, so x and y axis, or whatever you want to call them, have them labeled, as well as the scale labeled. Here we're counting by ones as indicated right here. Okay. Now the reason what a line graph is going to tell you is it tells you trends. So here, before we just had a bunch of dots and we didn't know the order, but now we have the order, and you can see that we started at time 1, and then as time went on, our distance went further, and then it came back a little bit, then it went really far, and then it came back again. So you can tell based on this line how far away you are. So let's say this is distance from your house. Well, at first I was walking away from my house, then I went a little bit towards my house, then I went really far away from my house to my furthest point, and then I came back. So you can tell this by just looking at this graph, and this is what you need to be able to do, is read a graph and tell what's going on. You can also tell, because we went this line is very steep, this has a steep slope, that you were going very fast here as well. So you could write a story about this and say, you know, hey, we started 2 feet away from the house, and then we started leaving, and we said, oops, we forgot our keys, went back, goes, oh, never mind, I have it, let's go really quickly. And then they went for a jog, and they go, oh wait, no, we have to start going back. And that's where the story ends. So you could come up with your own story based on what this graph is, and that's the skill that you need to be able to do to be successful on the SAT. So make sure you practice that. Alright, the other graph I want to show you is the stem and leaf plot. Stem and leaf plot looks like this. Say, typically we use bigger numbers, so let's get some bigger numbers up in here. Say we have the numbers 10, 15, 17, 22, 24, 35, 35, and 36. Okay? And here's how a stem and leaf plot works. On the trunk, you're going to put in just the first number. Okay? And then off to the right and to the left, you put the numbers. If you only have one data set, you put it on the right. If you have 2 data sets, you put the other one on the left. Okay? So I'm going to start with just 1, and then I'll show you what 2 looks like. Okay? So on the trunk, we're just going to put the first numbers that we see. In this case, we have 1, 2, and 3. So 1 being the 10s and the teens, 2 being the 20s, and 3 being the 30s. And then to the right, we're going to add all the numbers that go with those numbers. Okay? And I'm going to change colors just so you can see it. So this 0, 5, and 7, these are the ones that go with the 1, so we're going to add them over here as 0, 5, and 7. Next, we got the 20s. We got 2 and 4 for 22 and 24, so we're going to add them over here. And typically these are added in order from smallest to greatest. Next we have 35, 35, and 36, so we're going to actually have both 5s and the 6, so it ends up looking like this. So each number needs to be represented. So this is called a stem and leaf plot, and what it's telling you is this is what your numbers are. 10, 15, 17, 22, 24, 35, 35, and 36. And that's the numbers we started with. So it's really important that you can read this. And then here's what it would look like if they're giving you 2 data sets. So here, I'm going to use green for second data set. So let's say we have the numbers 11, 15, 20, 22, 25, 33, 33, 37. Okay, and what's going to happen this time is, just like before, we use this number, but the second data set's going to go to the left, and it starts in the smallest and goes to the left. So we'll put, for these numbers, the 1 and the 5, the 1 goes here, and then the 5 goes there. It actually goes out. And then we got 0, 2, and 5, so we got 0, 2, and 5. And then 3, 3, and 7. 3, 3, and 7. So our first set of numbers were going to be 10, 15, 17, 22, 24, 35, 35, and 36. And then our second set of numbers that we're going to compare with the first set is going to be 11, 15, 20, 22, 25, 33, 33, and 37. So this is called I think it's called a double stem and leaf plot. But make sure you can read this, because as long as you can read it, then you can create the numbers. And once you can create the numbers, just like when we did with the, not the histogram, the dot plot, you can find all of these things because you have the numbers. You can find the mean, median, mode, minimum, maximum, range, IQR. This is just a handy way to keep not just one set, but actually 2 sets of numbers that you want to compare later. So with 2 sets of numbers, then you can make, say, like a scatter plot or a line graph. All right, if you have any questions, please make sure you ask.